Adorno and Horkheimer, The Culture Industry Review. Sociological concepts showing lost support from objective belief and degeneration of final pre-capitalist remains, together with technical and societal differentiation in addition to the specialism that brings forth cultural disorder, are proved false by day-to-day experience. The reason for this is that, currently, culture is having the same kind of effect on everything. Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer, in their book, The Culture Industry, prove that the media, films, radios, and newspapers constitute systems that are reliable and complete in each and every element. All subdivisions of culture are unanimous. Even the artistic expression of political opposites proclaims similar supple rhythms. For example, the decorative, industrial management buildings and exhibition centers in authoritarian countries are much the same as anywhere else. For instance, gigantic tall buildings being constructed all over are apparent signs of the imaginative preparation of worldwide concerns, headed towards the direction where the unleashed commercial structure is already speeding up. This paper will, therefore, explain Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer's ideas on art and culture. The culture industry was a phrase made up of critical philosophers Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer. The two theorists argued in the book, particularly in the last section, The Culture Industry Dialectic of Enlightenment, that well-liked cultures are similar to a plant making consistent cultural commodities through films, radios, and periodicals for the sole aim of manipulating the community into submissiveness. The undemanding contentment accessible through the utilization of admired culture makes individuals passive and content, regardless of the hard economic situations they might find themselves in. Adorno and Horkheimer in their book stated that the idea of a mass-shaped culture is a threat to the more intricate high arts. They said that culture industries can promote bogus needs. By this, they meant needs that were shaped and contented by capitalism. They further stated that factual needs, on the contrary, are lack restrictions, inventiveness, or legitimate happiness. It is true that though the Western culture was once alienated to national markets, followed by high, middle, and lowbrows, the current outlook of mass culture is that of a solitary market where the most excellent or most admired work succeeds. This shows that the merging of media corporations has integrated control in the hands of a small number of international companies now in control of manufacturing and distribution. The underlying principle of this theory was to encourage the liberation of the user from the oppression of the manufacturers by inducing the user to subject attitudes and beliefs to questioning. The authors claim that clarification was supposed to bring about pluralism and demystification. However, the general public supposedly experienced a big fall as it is tainted by industries that are capitalists harboring exploitative intentions. The author's theory on this subject states that everything made by an individual is a manifestation of his/her labors and an articulation of their objectives. The theory also emphasizes the use of value. It shows that the advantages to the user areas are consequent to its utility. The exchange value reflects its usefulness and the circumstances of the marketplace, i.e., the costs paid by the TV broadcasters or at box offices. Nevertheless, when using an example of current soap operas with their exchangeable plots and prescribed descriptions, conferences replicate standardized creation procedures and the diminishing costs of a mass-created cultural product. The authors show us that only on rare occasions are films released that produce a constructive intuition on the universal conversation and attain a high exchange value. Generally, only high art condemns a world out of its limits, although the right to this type of communication is restricted to the privileged. Here, the threats of bringing in social unsteadiness are slight. A movie like Patton is a popular art that brings disagreement in the social order and harmony that, as per the authors, is losing headway into a cultural blandness. The writer's theory of historical materialism is teleological. The community goes through a dialectic of recounting phases from very old forms of producing to feudalism, capitalism, and then to upcoming communism. On the other hand, the authors believed the culture industry was not to allow an adequate foundation of exigent material to come out onto the market, disturbing the status quo and then rousing the ultimate communist state to materialize. The people criticizing this theory state that the creation of mass culture cannot be well liked if the populace doesn't benefit from it. They go ahead and state that culture is autonomous in its governance. This criticism denies the author's current political implications, since politics in successful societies is more apprehensive to action than with contemplation. The author's thoughts that the masses are simply entities of a culture industry are connected to their feelings that the occasion when the working class may possibly be the instrument of bringing down capitalism is over. More criticism shows that high culture cannot again be exempted from the role of justifying capitalism. The institution and strengthening of exclusiveness are shown by the critics as a significant constituent in the roles of such genres as operas and ballets. On the other hand, in spite of the mentioned tribulations, the theory has manipulated logical discussions on popular culture study, and cultural institution studies.